A US warship appears so fearful of the Houthi threat that it is deliberately avoiding passage through the Red Sea, choosing instead to steer clear of the region rather than risk a direct encounter. Despite Donald Trump's repeated claims that the United States possesses the strongest military in the world, this development suggests a stark contrast. A US aircraft carrier is now taking the significantly longer route of sailing all the way around the African continent, dramatically extending its journey just to eventually reach the strategic Hormuz Strait. This situation marks a fresh embarrassment for the United States, as it now effectively blockades the Hormuz Strait after previously failing to secure and reopen safe passage through the critical waterway. The US aircraft carrier USS George H.W. Bush has reportedly altered its planned route in order to avoid potential confrontation with Houthi forces, according to emerging reports highlighting growing security concerns in the region. The USS George H.W. Bush is now said to be sailing around the entire African continent, taking a significantly longer path as it makes its way toward the strategically important Arabian Sea. This adjusted route allows the US warship to completely bypass the Red Sea as well as the critical Bab el Mandeb Strait, amid escalating threats posed by Houthi activity in those waters. The USS George H.W. Bush is expected to eventually join the increasing US naval presence positioned near the Strait of Hormuz, which is being closely monitored and effectively controlled according to reports. These movements of the USS George H.W. Bush were reported by Iran International, which cited information from USNI News on April 14th, adding further tension to the unfolding situation. The USS George H.W. Bush Carrier Strike Group had been operating in waters near Namibia before being reassigned to a new mission in the Middle East, marking a significant shift in its deployment focus. US officials reportedly told USNI News that the warship deliberately chose to take a much longer and less direct route, instead of following the conventional path typically used for such deployments. Under normal circumstances, the warship would have sailed through the Mediterranean Sea and then passed via the Suez Canal, which is considered the fastest and most efficient route to the region. However, the Red Sea and the strategically vital Bab el Mandeb Strait have witnessed repeated attacks by Houthi forces since October 2024, raising serious security concerns for naval movement. Following a temporary truce involving the United States in 2025, Houthi forces reportedly re-entered the conflict after the US and Israel carried out strikes against Iran in February 2026, escalating tensions once again. Meanwhile, the United States is said to be blockading Iranian ports as part of a broader strategy to pressure Tehran, particularly after diplomatic efforts failed to produce a breakthrough. This blockade follows more than a month of unsuccessful US attempts to counter and end Iran's control over the crucial Strait of Hormuz, which remains a critical global energy choke point. Reports indicate that a US naval blockade in the Strait of Hormuz came into effect on April 13th, according to multiple sources. US naval forces have reportedly begun restricting vessels from entering or departing ports associated with Iran. A White House official confirmed to CNBC that the blockade in the Strait of Hormuz is now operational. Naval units at sea are said to have adhered to President Trump's stated 10 a.m. Eastern Time deadline for enforcing the blockade. The US president also issued a new warning to Iran through a statement posted on Truth Social on April 13th. Trump stated that Iran's fast attack vessels could face retaliation if they attempt to interfere with US operations. The US president said, and I quote, "Iran's navy is laying at the bottom of the sea, completely obliterated, 158 ships. What we have not hit are their small number of, what they call, fast attack ships, because we did not consider them much of a threat. Warning, if any of these ships come anywhere close to our blockade, they will be immediately eliminated, using the same system of kill that we use against the drug dealers on boats at sea. It is quick and brutal. PS 98.2% of drugs coming into the US by ocean or sea have stopped." End quote. Iran's foreign ministry responded strongly, criticizing what it described as a unilateral blockade imposed by the United States. Spokesperson Esmail Bagai questioned whether such actions could justify broader economic consequences at a global level. Iran Foreign Ministry said, and I quote, "Can an illegal war of choice be won through a revenge of choice against the global economy? Is it ever worthwhile to cut off one's nose to spite one's face?" End quote. Ahead of the stated deadline, Iran's armed forces indicated that maritime security in the region would be directly impacted if its interests were threatened. The Strait of Hormuz, off the coast of Iran, is a vital waterway in the Middle East, forming the narrow maritime gateway through which much of the region's energy supply must pass. The Hormuz Strait is a critical chokepoint for global trade and is approximately 33 kilometers wide at its narrowest point, making it both strategically important and highly vulnerable. At around 20 million barrels per day, the strait handles roughly one-fifth of global oil consumption, turning this single passage into a lifeline for economies around the world. The strait also carries between 20% and 25% of the world's liquefied natural gas, with Qatar as its primary source, underscoring how central this corridor is to global energy security. Over 80% of the oil passing through the Hormuz Strait is destined for Asian markets, tying the stability of this waterway directly to the economic health of the region. China, India, Japan and South Korea are the primary importers of the oil and LNG moving via the strait, making them especially exposed to any disruption or blockade.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that we will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest news makers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the US will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry ghats.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HT videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.